Hey, how's it going out there, all my legacy leaders? This is Robert Heath Sr., CEO of Legacy Leadership Consulting and the Legacy Empowerment Academy, coming here to you with another one of our legacy leadership moments. It's another Monday, and so here we are. What we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about step 5 of the Empower Method. Again, the Empower Method is the 7 steps to getting the best out of your team, to increasing productivity and reducing stress as a leader. Those are the steps that I identify in my, hey, how we doing, Steven? Those are the steps that I identify in my book, which you can get on Amazon right now. It is Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to having more fulfillment, reduce stress or less stress, and getting the best out of your team. Basically, what I want to do is go through with you all again today. We're going to talk about step 5, but I want to recap for those of you all that have not seen our other videos. You can find those. They're still up right now. We're going to be putting them together in a package. So if you head over to #LegacyLeaders, you'll be able to get all of those. Join the group, because we're going to put those together in a 7 video package that we're going to be putting together here shortly. But remember, step 1, of course, is the E step. It is to examine and to evaluate your expectations. And the main things that we focus on when we're looking at step 1, what we talk about is making sure that your team is set up for success, not just in the long term, but also in the short term. That you're getting your team ready for strengths. How you doing, Brittany? And so the big thing that we want to focus on when we're talking about evaluating your expectations is, again, setting your team up for success, making sure that you develop reasonable short-term, long-term expectations. Step 2 is to measure their expectations, right? So remember that you are the person that controls your team's perception of success. What is good, what is bad, what is in the direction we're going, and what's out of that direction are all based on what you determine as the leader. So you control their perception, you structure their reality, you define their success. So always make sure that you're setting them up, again, for success and having reasonable expectations. Step number 3, we want to exercise proper delegation principles. So we have the 5 principles of proper delegation. We talked about clarity, aspiration, inspiration, trust, and ownership. And we go through those. The basic idea is that in order to delegate, which we've talked about and we've heard about so much literature, but the key to delegation is that you have to empower. You are not delegating if you are not empowering. Hey, Monica, how you doing out there? Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up and joining in. And so today, and I'm sorry, that was step 3. And then step 4, we talked about opportunities and optimizing your opportunities for growth. So on your team, how do you optimize your environment, and how you optimize your opportunities for your team to grow, to get bigger, to take more initiative. And so we talked about understanding that failure is foundational to success. We talked about one of my favorite quotes from Mike Tyson, right? And being able to be comfortable with failure is that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So understanding that resiliency is what leadership is about, cultivating that resiliency. And we'll talk about that in the step today as well. And so, and the key mantra kind of for the culture that you want to create is the idea that done is better than perfect. We want to fail early, we want to fail often, and we want to fail forward. Because if you learn from those mistakes, then they're not for nothing. Then they haven't been losses, actually, right? One of the things that Grandmaster Elio Gracie, for those of you all that don't know that I'm also a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu instructor, one of the things one of the quotes that I love from him is, I never lose. I either win or I learn, right? And that's the concept that you want to cultivate in your environment, right? And so that brings us to today. And today's step 5 of the Empower Method is the step that's determined, and you see it in the notes. It's called Watch and Learn, right? And this is basically empowering supervision, right? At this point in time, and in this step, where you are is that you want to develop your ability to supervise in an empowering way. And so there's 4 key principles that we want to focus on today in watching and learning and empowering supervision. Those principles are: trust your people, number 1. Number 2, build a process that you can trust. Number 3, mitigate against catastrophic failures. Number 4, inspect what you expect. So again, that's number 1, trust your people. Number 2, build a process that you can trust. Number 3, mitigate against catastrophic failures. And number 4, inspect what you expect. So I want to just say to all those you all who are here, thank you again. And so we're going to go ahead and get into that. If you have any questions or if you want to see those other videos, like I said, go ahead and join the group in #LegacyLeaders, and we'll be able to get you access to those, and my team will get that to you. So what I want to do right now is talk a little bit about that step 1, trusting your people, right? One of the things that we call this step watch and learn, because once you have set the vision, right, you've made it plain, you've cast the vision for your people, you have communicated that vision to them, you've given them their tasks, and you've delegated appropriately, most of your work is done. Now it's time to trust your people, trust the greatness that they have within them, trust their ability to learn, trust their ability to do, right? And so it's crucial that, right, in the last chapter we talked about you're going to have clarity, so your delegation of tasks and roles is going to be clear to them. They're going to see the same picture you're going to see. It's going to be aspirational. It'll inspire them to hope for a better future. It'll also inspire them to do more and to act and to work on that. And you will have engendered trust of them in you, that you have their best interests at heart, right? And you have given them ownership of those things. Now here's the key. Once you give them that ownership, you have to actually do it in practice, not just in word. You have to watch and allow that to happen, right? So as you're trusting your people, the key is to show them that trust. And I want you to think back to, when we're teaching children to walk, or when we're teaching children anything, 0 to 5. I want you to think about the way that we teach kids. Teach them to speak, teach them to walk, teach them to eat, all of those different types of things. For those of you all that have had children, or you've had nieces, nephews, or you've babysat or anything like that, everybody's had the similar experience and I want you to think about how we think about kids, right? There's very rarely a fear that those kids aren't going to learn how to walk. There's very rarely a fear that those kids aren't going to learn how to talk. There's very rarely a fear that those kids aren't going to learn how to eat and how to move and to do the things they need to do. As a matter of fact, it's almost a foregone conclusion. We trust them so much that we praise everything they do along that path, because we know inherently, kind of intuitively, that it's getting them to that end, because they already have it within them. We've seen it over and over and over again. And so because we trust the fact that they can accomplish the thing, right, then we go ahead and we focus on just helping them along that path. And that is what empowering supervision is all about. That is at the crux of our lesson today. And so it starts off with trusting your people. But I know what you're thinking. How do I trust that this process, or that they're going to be able to do it right in this business or in this company, right? They're new, or we've just instituted a new process, all those types of things. And that brings us to step number 2. You have to build a process that you can trust. And this is the key paradigm shift that you have to understand about supervision. This is where the learn part comes in this step, which is watch and learn. In building a process that you can trust, you have to realize that you're not perfect, and your process isn't going to be perfect right off the bat. That your process is going to be continually improving, and that your process is going to be dynamic in a couple of places, because you're going to have different people coming through. And so in understanding that your process isn't perfect, and that you're building a process that you can trust, you can then take away some of the pressure from your people to execute perfectly, right? And this gets us back to cultivating an environment where mistakes are acceptable, where failure is understood as necessary to progress. And so in building a process that you can trust, you are actually benefiting from your people's mistakes, from the places where the process doesn't serve them necessarily. It helps you to become a better leader. It helps you to learn what changes need to be made that much better. And you actually get that information from your people. So that is why building a process you can trust is understanding that this is a continual improvement process. Leadership is not a static business, especially empowering leadership, where you're trying to facilitate the manifestation of greatness from other people, where they're doing the work and their greatness is going to shine forth. Your job is to ever be learning, ever be figuring out more inventive and innovative ways to pull obstacles out of their path so that they can run forward at full speed. Right? So understanding that building a process you can trust is crucial to your to how we understand or how we look at the failures that may happen along the way, right? And this leads us to our next point, which is we have to mitigate for catastrophic failures, right? And I want you to think back again to that analogy we talked about with kids learning how to walk, learning how to talk, learning how to do those types of things. There are certain things that can make that process unforgivably dangerous, right? And so when we teach children how to walk, there are certain things that everybody kind of knows that we do. We cover outlets to make sure that the kids can't get shocked. We cover sharp edges or sharp corners. We move forks or anything that's sharp that might be on the floor that they could fall on that could possibly injure them in such a way that they couldn't bounce back from it, right? And it's really important to pay attention to that fact, because when we're talking about catastrophic failures and we're talking about leadership in general, right? And we got 6 chimes coming in right here. But when we're talking about leadership in general, especially when we're talking about failures, the leader's job, one of the most important jobs of the leader, is to cultivate resiliency. It's to develop the ability of your people to bounce back from their failures, from their mistakes, to develop their ability to know who they are, and understand their greatness, and to keep moving towards that greatness, regardless of the mistakes that they may make along the way. Because again, if we trust the people, if we trust the process, we know that they're going to get there if they don't quit. The champion is not defined by how many times the champion gets knocked down. The champion is defined by how many times they get back up, right? You get knocked down 7 times and you get up 8, you're a champion. And the key to that, right? The key to this process is, as a leader, your job is to look at the things that your people or you as a leader are not capable of bouncing back from. Those are things that would end your business. Those are things that would create horrific lawsuits. Those are things that would maybe make you lose your job as a mid-level leader, or even as a business owner, that would get you embroiled in some sort of controversy. Those types of things, it's understandable that you will put mitigation factors in place so that those things can't happen. But then, once you have made the space safe, right? Now it's your job to let your people learn, and to let you learn, and to see how these things go. And so often we get focused on and are afraid of the things that are, that could be catastrophic, that we treat everything like it's that dangerous. And that's the problem. And that's why we have to mitigate for those failures. We have to think about them in advance, right? And we talk about this a little bit in step 1, when we talk about doing your SWOT analysis and looking at the threats towards your ability to maximize your opportunities, right? Once you've done those and you've mitigated for those, the key to this point, and this is the crux of what you do, is that it frees you from the fear of that catastrophic failure. It frees you, it frees your people, and it allows you to operate in that space of exploration, of innovation, of learning, and that is where greatness can manifest itself, right? So I want you to really focus on mitigating for those catastrophic failures and understanding the difference between a catastrophic failure and simply a mistake or something that we can bounce back from. And understand that those change over time, because the more resilient your people become, the less they have to worry about. Just as the older your kids become, the less things that you have to do to protect them, right? My son is 7 now, and he can fall and bump his head, and I can go get him an ice pack, and everything's good. His skull is fused, life is good, right? Whereas if he had the same type of fall when he was 1 or 2, it could have been brain damaging. These are the types of things that you recognize as a leader as well over time, when your business is just starting or when your team is just functioning and you're learning each other. That trust dynamic isn't built as high. There are certain things that you can't let people do, whereas teams that have been working together for 5, 10, 15 years can say things and be involved in each other's lives and critique each other in different ways. So just be aware of that as a leader, and know that it's your job to mitigate for those catastrophic failures so that you can be freed of the fear and so that your people can be freed of the fear, of the very real fear of actually harming the enterprise. And then that moves us to our last point, and this is the point that's kind of most potent here, and it's the point of inspecting what you expect, right? And we've talked about this a number of times, having congruent communication, ensuring that the things that you are focusing on are the things that you want your people to focus on. One of my mentors and a great motivational speaker, Eric Thomas, talks about this in this way. He says, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And I want to put a little twist on that for you, for the leader, for the empowering leader. Where your focus goes, their energy flows. Where you are focused, that's where your people are going to put the majority of their energy. And so if you want them focusing on the positives, if you want them focusing on being more innovative, if you want them focusing on being more problem solving, if you want them focusing on taking initiative, then that's where your focus has to be. You have to make sure that you're praising those things and that you're pointing out those things that they're doing that you want them to do. And we'll talk about this a lot more in step 7 when we talk about rewarding what you want to see continue. But I want you to really focus on the fact that what you measure in your business, your people will pay attention to. What you do quality control checks on, what you go in and counsel them on, your people will pay attention to, right? But they won't just pay attention to it in your overt actions. They'll pay attention to it in your kind of unconscious actions. I was just having a discussion with a colleague of mine today who helps out with manufacturers in the area, and one of the things that he was talking about, we were having a discussion about lean leadership and lean manufacturing, and how we talk about the principles of 5S, and oftentimes owners or managers will talk to their people about 5S in the area, and part of 5S is keeping things clean, keeping things neat, and they'll talk about 5S in the area, and they'll harp on people 5S in the area, but then they'll bring them to their offices to do their quarterly or annual reviews, and their offices are a mess. And the key point there is your behavior has to be congruent with your talk, right? We've got to walk the talk. And so when we talk about inspecting what you expect, there's 2 prongs to that. Number 1, you have to be intentional about seeking out the things that you expect. And number 2, you have to make sure that you're living those things. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, but what it does, right? What it does is it makes you have to be honest about where you are on that process. And that creates authenticity, that creates integrity, that creates faith and trust in the relationship, because people know that you're honest about where you are. It's okay if your office needs to be 5S as well. Perhaps that's the thing that you start off with, right? But the key is that you inspect what you expect, and you make that a congruent conversation in your business. So it's really key that you do that as well. Inspecting what you expect, like I said, is one of the most important parts of empowering leadership. It's putting everybody's focus on the things that need to be focused on, and it's a nonverbal way to ensure that you're reinforcing what are the priorities for your team, what are the priorities for your organization, what are the priorities for your business, right? And so the key here, and I want to read this for you, by being consistent in your communication about what is important, you have the ability to motivate your team simply by doing your job. No extra work necessary. The things you pay attention to, they will pay attention to. The things you ask questions about, they will ask questions about. The things you inspect will show what you expect, and they will get done by your team. They will rise to meet your expectations. They just simply need your communication about your expectations to be congruent. They need to not get mixed messages. And so I really want you to focus on that, right? And we talked a little bit about it, accentuating the positive. And the last thing that I really want you to focus on is you want to make sure that you're protecting your team as they're going through their process. This watch and learn, this empowering supervision process is extremely crucial in the fact that sometimes you'll have external watchers or external actors that will say or do things in contravention of the culture that you're creating. You have people that will comment or especially with the larger companies that I work in that have multiple divisions, you'll have people from upper management that will come down and will comment on things. It's very crucial that you're able to protect your people from external forces when they're following your mandates and they're doing what you're asking them to do. Your job is to make sure that anything that is going wrong, you are protecting them and taking ownership of that, taking responsibility for that, and that you're also making sure they're getting whatever praise for the things that they're doing well. Because ultimately, whatever they're doing at your behest, they're following your vision. And in order to make sure that you keep faith and keep trust with them, it's crucial that you ensure that you're protecting them, right? And the basic mantra is, if it's good, it's them. If it's bad, it's me. That's the leader's motto, right? And so ultimately, the execution process of your plan, right? This is why what we're supervising. They're executing the plan, right? This is the time for you to be a fan of your team. I titled this step Watch and Learn because because that's mostly what you do here. Like we said earlier, you watch and you learn. For the most part, you are a silent observer, marveling in the abilities of your team and appreciating all of the work that you don't have to do as the leader because they are capable of accomplishing it. When you are needed to intervene, you are a willing participant. You're there to help them to facilitate this transition, right? However, much of your work has already been accomplished in the vision, in the delegation, and in the setting of the roles and setting your team up for success. This is the space the empowering leader seeks to occupy more and more of the time. This is where you reside as you begin to develop your team so that they can even take on much of the planning work that you do currently. This is how we become the types of leaders that Lao Tzu talked about in the Tao Te Ching so many years ago, over 3,000 years ago. Mastering this step is the first step to getting your people to go from being led and feeling like they just do what they're told to being the type of people that Lao Tzu talked about when he said, when the leader's task is accomplished, when his job is done, the people say, we did it ourselves. So that is the watch and learn step we're going to talk about. We're going to wrap up with the last three steps. The last two steps, the E and the R, here over the next couple of weeks. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, leaders change the world because they change the legacies of those they lead. So let's go and change the world one legacy at a time. And remember to live every day like it was on purpose. Talk to you soon.